today, we're going to take a look at the king of Judah, who is in that situation, who no matter what he did, nothing really was going to change. But I want you to understand the decision that he made and why. He is faced with something that horrifies him. So because we're going to look at 2 chapters, we're just going to read to the point of tension in 2 Corinthians chapter 22. We'll read that whole chapter. It's not very long. But in 2 Kings chapter 22, we're going to look at the last good king of Judah and of Israel's history, a king by the name of Josiah. And this is, the more I study Josiah, the more I just go, wow, I am so glad I named my son after such a great man. He was truly one of the best kings in all of Israel's history. Let's look at 2 Kings chapter 22, verse 1. It says, Josiah was only 8 years old, when he began to reign, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jedidiah, daughter of Adiah of Bozekath. And he did, key verse about him, he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord and walked in all the way of David, his father. He did not turn aside to the right or to the left. How awesome is that? You have someone like Manasseh who started to reign at 12 years old and he was garbage his entire life. You then take someone like Josiah who was even younger than Manasseh, his grandfather. And yet all the days of his life, he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. Verse 3, in the 18th year of King Josiah, the king sent Shaphan, the son of Azaliah, son of Meshullam, the secretary, to the house of the Lord, saying, go up to Hilkiah, the high priest, that he may count the money that he has brought into the house of the Lord, which the keepers of the threshold have collected from the people. And let it be given into the hand of the workmen who have the oversight of the house of the Lord, and let them give it to the workmen who are at the house of the Lord, repairing the house, that is, to the carpenters and to the builders and to the masons, and let them use it for buying timber and quarried stone to repair the house. But no accounting shall be asked from them for the money that is delivered into their hand, for they deal honestly. Verse 8. And Hilkiah the high priest said to Shaphan the secretary, hey, I found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. And Hilkiah gave it to Shaphan, and he read it. And Shaphan the secretary came to the king, reported to the king, your servants have emptied out the money that was found in the house, delivered it into the hand of the workmen who have oversight of the house of the Lord. Then Shaphan the secretary told the king, and Hilkiah, the priest, has given me a book. And Shaphan read it before the king. Verse 11, when the king heard the words of the book of the law, he tore his clothes. He commanded Hilkiah the high priest and Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, and Akbor, the son of Micaiah, and Shaphan the secretary, and Asaiah, the king's servant, saying, go inquire of the Lord for me, for the people, and for all Judah concerning the words that has been found in this book. For great is the wrath of the Lord that is kindled against us because of our fathers have not obeyed the words of his book to do according to all that is written concerning us. So Hilkiah and all the others that he commanded went to Huldah, the prophetess, of the wife of Shallum, the son of Tikvah, the sons of Harhas, keeper of the wardrobe. Now she lived in Jerusalem in the second quarter. And they talked with her, and she said to them, this is really important. Thus saith the Lord, behold, I will bring disaster upon this place and upon its inhabitants, and all the words of the book that the kings of Judah has read, because they have forsaken me and have made offerings to other gods, and they provoked me to anger with all the works of their hands. Therefore, my wrath will be kindled against this place, and it will not be quenched. But the king of Judah, who sent you to inquire of the Lord, thus shall you say to him, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, regarding the words that you have heard, because your heart was penitent and you humbled yourself before the Lord when you heard how I spoke against this place and against its inhabitants, that they should become a desolation and a curse, and you have torn your clothes and wept before me, I also have heard you, declares the Lord. Therefore, behold, I will gather you to your fathers, and you shall be gathered to your grave in peace, and your eyes shall not see the disaster that I will bring upon this place. And they brought back word to the king. So Josiah is now in a predicament. He repented before the Lord, as he should have done. And he sought a prophetess who told him, it doesn't matter what you do. Disaster is going to fall on this land. What do you do from that point out? Nothing Josiah is going to do is going to change the outcome. But what does he decide in the midst of, well, I'm sorry. I wish my people were better, but they're not. We're in trouble. Let's take a look at this predicament that Josiah is now in. Again, Josiah starts to reign when he's only 8 years old. Now, this probably was quite difficult for him because as an 8-year-old, he's given this awesome power of being a king, but he's 8. So how much authority does an 8-year-old king truly have? The people, though he probably witnessed the transformation of his grandfather Manasseh and saw the horrors of his father Amnon and how it led to his disaster in only 2 years, he decided from a very early age, I'm going to follow after the Lord. But the people didn't agree with him. So he's standing up to try to say, I want to be obedient to God. And the people are like, whatevs. Doesn't matter. We're just going to keep doing our own thing. And they continued to live in sin. No matter what he did. Just right there, a lot of people would give up. They'd say, you know what? It's not worth it. These horrible people never change. There's no improvement. We're just stuck in the same rut year after year, week after week, month after month. It just is so exhausting. But Josiah didn't give up. When he became an adult, he said, after walking in everything that was straight in the eyes of Yahweh, he said to his servant, to Shaphan, he was the secretary, and he said, you know what? We ought to restore the temple. We ought to fix the temple. The temple has been dilapidated for a while. Yes, Manasseh did go in and tear out all those false gods, but you know what? He probably didn't really work hard because it was the end of his life to repair the temple. And certainly Josiah's father didn't do it. He fell into all the garbage that Manasseh did earlier in his life. He brought, in fact, the idols back in. So he's like, you know what? We've really got to repair the temple. We got to fix this. So he decides to go to Shaphan and he says to Shaphan, you know what? We have a bunch of silver. There was a tax. Imagine rather than a tithe, every time you came into the church, every man was required to pay something like maybe $20 to $100 every time you came into the building. So if you came in Sunday to worship, you paid $100. You came in the middle of the week for an equipping class, you paid another $100. Every man, every time. So when you came in, the purpose of that money was to make sure the building remained kept. That we could repair all the damage that was done, the wear and tear, the broken lights, the chipped paint, all that stuff, the dirty carpets. We could clean up, we could fix, we could repair this place so that it looked nice. That was a temple tax. They did that so as people came into the temple, they paid a coin of silver in order to be able to make sure the temple was kept up. But they had all of this money, but it never was used. So Josiah said, you know what? You need to take that money that is used for the house of Yahweh, and you need to give it to the builders. He said, you need to make the house strong. Repair the temple, restore it, fix it, bring it back to its original glory to the days under Solomon. You take that money, and he said to them this, I don't care how they spend it. I don't care what they do with it. No oversight. You just give them the money and you say, fix it. Well, for a builder, that is both dangerous and kind of an incentive. Because as a builder, if you work fast and you work hard and you restore everything and the king likes it, you get to keep all the leftover money. But you sometimes can then kind of cut around corners and maybe just make it look nice. It's not really nice, right? That's the dangerous part of it. But Josiah said, no, I trust them. Give them all the money. Let them go. Let them repair. And so they did. They started to really work hard on the temple. And in this reconstruction process, the builders and the high priest Hilkiah discovered this lost book. We don't know exactly how or why this book was lost. But the speculation is that sometime during the days of Judges, the book of Deuteronomy got shuffled in someplace so that by the time you ended up having like pots where they usually stored some of the books of the law in, and it got moved around and put into the temple, the book of Deuteronomy got shoved into storage and wasn't really used. And so all of a sudden you start pulling stuff out of storage. What is this? Oh, hey, there's this book. Hey, this is about Moses. These are laws. These are rules. We haven't even read these before. So he pulls out this book and he hands it to Shaphan, Josiah's secretary, who's in charge of making sure that the temple was restored. He was given that responsibility. He says, you got to give this to the king. So Shaphan goes to King Josiah and he says, hey, all the stuff that is that you said to be done, it's being done. I gave them all the silver, all that stuff. It's all good. Construction is underway. Things are looking good. But you know what? We found this lost book. Do you want to know what it says? And Josiah's like, hey, it's a book of the law. It's in the temple. It's got to be good. Yes, read it to me. And so Hilkiah began to read to King Josiah the words that were in that law. And when he got towards the end, in the end of Deuteronomy, there are a series of blessings and curses for those who do not keep or those who do keep the law. If you keep the law, there's a series of blessings. If you do not keep the law, there's a series of curses. And Josiah got to that page and went, we are in trouble. We're not keeping the law. We are going to be messed up. This is awful. God is he must be infuriating. We're infuriating him. We're so screwed. And when the king tears his clothes, that means something. You don't see President Biden when Ukraine got invaded and he got up to the podium and went, right? That doesn't happen these days, but that's the equivalent of what would happen if you heard that the king tore his clothes. Something really bothered him. And Josiah realized we are in such deep weeds. We are in so much trouble. You ever done something that badly that you know the moment your parents are going to find out, your backside is going to be 50 shades of purple? Right? Yes. It's scary. Deuteronomy 28:25. This is why Josiah was so freaked out. It says that the Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before your enemies. You shall go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them, and you shall be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. Josiah has already seen the northern 10 tribes have that curse happen upon them. And they couldn't stand against the Assyrians. And they were taken into captivity and spread all over the nations. And you now have no idea where those descendants of Naphtali, of Dan, of Issachar, of Manasseh, of Ephraim have gone. This is bad. We're down to 2, maybe 3 tribes at best, with Benjamin, with Judah, and with the Levites. And he knows, Josiah knows, we're just as guilty. God has already said to Manasseh, because of you, I'm sending the children of Judah into captivity. So he says to the best people that he can trust, he says, you've got to seek the Lord about this. You've got to go to a prophetess and ask her about these things that are written in the book. Ask her if there's any chance for us. So they go. Hilkiah and others, that's what the et al means, and others. This large contingent from Josiah, who included the high priest, included the secretary, included some of their children, all went to seek this woman. Now, the reason why I want to stop just for a second on this woman named Shallum, is because there's often this conception in the Bible that says, you know what, God will use women sometimes when the men don't step up. That's why Deborah might have been selected, and maybe here that's why Shallum is being selected. I have a problem with that. And the reason why I have a problem with that is this: Jeremiah is alive right now. He certainly could have been consulted by Josiah. He had a reign or a ministry lasting 70 years in Judah, stretching from Manasseh all the way through to the destruction of the southern kingdom. Maybe he wasn't in Jerusalem at the time. We don't know. But for whatever reason, Josiah had no problem seeking out this woman. You know what it tells me? It tells me God doesn't care what your gender is. You serve him, he'll use you. You understand? We often get hung up on things that are what I would consider minutia. Minutia, like should men be pastors or should women be pastors or should men be president or should women be president? There's a better question, and the better question is this: what does it mean to serve the Lord? What does it mean to lead in God's kingdom? And Jesus said, and we're going to study this over and over again in Mark, so I'm not going to completely steal all my thunder when I get to it then. But it's this: you want to be great in God's kingdom, you become a servant. This woman served the Lord. And so God used her at a crucial time in Josiah's life. The high priest goes to her. The men of the court go to her and they say, what are we going to do? What does God say? And she says this: you're all screwed. She says, behold, evil is going to be coming upon this place, but on the one to proceed to be dwelling in all the words of this book. What is she saying? You read the book. God doesn't lie. You guys broke the commandment of his law. You're going to pay the price for it. There is truth and there is consequences. Reminds me of a great song by Stephen Curtis Chapman. The chorus of the song says, it's either truth or consequences, there's no other way. Push truth aside, the other takes its place. You can close your eyes, but that won't make it go away. The truth or consequences must be faced. They pushed aside the truth, here comes the consequences. Nothing they could do about it. And they did it so badly, so frequently, that God said, I will judge them, because they sacrificed to other gods, because they tried to provoke me to anger with all the works that they did. They wanted me to be upset with them, so I am. And they're going to get what they deserve. But she had this for Josiah. But the king, the one who sent you to seek the Lord, the one who sent you to see me, this is what Yahweh says. Thus the God of Israel says to you, because of what you did, because of your tender heart, because you humbled yourself before Yahweh, you cried out to the Lord, you tore your garments, God says, I have heard you. I love what my mom said. You do your best because you have to look at yourself in the mirror. I'm going to do one better. You do your best because God is watching. And when you do your best, that's when God says, even though calamity may befall the entire world, I have heard you. And I'm going to do something in you. Behold, she said, Josiah is not going to face this calamity. It's not going to happen in his lifetime. He's going to be gathered to his fathers in peace, and then afterwards, you're all in trouble. So you better be praying, long lives the king, right? Because I'll at least delay it for a season. But calamity was coming. Now, when word of that gets back to Josiah, he is now faced with the same dilemma I presented to you. There is nothing that is going to change the outcome. So how do you respond? There's nothing that's going to fix this. Judah will go into captivity. It is a fait accompli. It's going to happen. It's already done. But the good news is, you're not going to see it. It's not in your lifetime. Which means it doesn't matter what I do. If I work really hard for God, Judah's still going into captivity. If I give up, well, it's not going to be in my lifetime. What do? The human tendency is to say, screw it, give up. I don't care. Doesn't matter. Doesn't change anything. Doesn't fix the problem. Since I can't guarantee that I can make any form of improvement, why bother? That's our humanity speaking. That's our sinful nature saying, just let it go. Just don't worry about it. Just give in. Because you can't change anything. We want the outcome to be different or guaranteed somehow in order for us to give it our all. But that's not what God is asking of us. He wants more Josiahs. He wants more who will say, it doesn't matter if I change anything. I'll give my all no matter what. And that is what Josiah did. He has a choice. Give up. Go on. Give up. Doesn't matter. Who cares? It's all going to work out the same anyway. Well, you know what? I'm going to do my very best. I'm going to try to change as much as I can. I'm going to give all to the Lord because he is my God and he deserves my very best. Even if it doesn't change my circumstances, God deserves my best. What decision would you make? So Josiah stands up and he goes to the people and he says, hey, I found this new book. We're going to read it. And he gathers all the men, all the people living in Jerusalem at the time, all the men of Judah, the leaders of their tribes. He gathers them to the temple. He stands up on the pillar and he reads for them the book of Deuteronomy. And he says, this is what we should have followed. This is what we should have done. And when he gets done, he says, we need to make a covenant with God based upon what is written in this book. And so he forces them. But unfortunately, a man forced against his will is still of the same opinion still. So Josiah makes them have a covenant, but it doesn't change the hearts of many of these people. And they're itching the moment Josiah leaves to go back to their old ways. But Josiah doesn't stop there. He says, all right, we're clearing out the temple. We're going to continue to fix this. I'm removing those idols. But he goes one better than Manasseh. Manasseh took the idols and he threw them out of Jerusalem. He said, we're getting rid of these. And Josiah said, I'm not going to stop there. We're going to take them. We're going to go out of the city with these idols and we're going to burn them to dust. We're destroying these things so that they can't be brought back in. This is done. This idolatry ends now. And so he destroyed all the altars to Baal. He destroyed the Asherah poles. He destroyed anything that was connected to any false god, whether it was in the court or whether it was in the temple himself. He sought it out and he crushed it, ground it into powder, and he spread it all over for 2 miles. The dust that he had gathered from wrecking the false gods that had been accumulating in Jerusalem. And he took those priests that were serving those gods, and he did what the law commanded. He executed them. He didn't say, oh, well, you know what? You didn't really know any better. He said, no, you knew better, and you still followed after these gods. That's treason. That deserves death. And he put him to death. He destroyed the priests. And in fact, in some cases, he even took the priests and sacrificed them on their own altars to their false gods. Yeah, you want to talk about serious? He's like, if you think your God can save you, let him try. Proving they were not serving gods. He went into the temple, and they had in the temple this brothel. This place where you could go into the temple of Yahweh and go sleep with a prostitute and serve false gods. Gross. That's sacrilege. He tore down brick by brick. He pulled it to the ground, scattered the dust. He pulverized it. He went to all the high places around Jerusalem. Any place there was an altar or an Asherah pole to any false god, Molech, Baal, Dagon, didn't matter. Destroyed them all, wiped them out. And he didn't just do that, he desecrated it. What does it mean to desecrate one of these altars? Every religion, whether it is a religion to God or whether it is a false religion, has ritual practices, things that you do, things that you're not supposed to do, things that you are supposed to do. For example, Islam has some things that you're supposed to do. One of the rules of Islam is you're not supposed to eat pork. So when Russia was trying to suppress religions, they suppressed Christianity and they suppressed Islam. They suppressed Christianity more, but they still suppressed Islam. You would have some of the Islamic leaders, some of the imams, fight back. While the Russians desecrated the Islamic high priests or the Islamic imams by saying to them, if you try to rise up against us, when we kill you, we will bury you in the skin of pork so your God will not touch you. That's desecration. You take the rules of that religion and you use it to destroy the religion. That's what Josiah did. He made sure that everybody realized you follow these false gods, you're an abomination. And no one is going to touch you, no one is going to save you. And he went all throughout Israel doing this, all throughout Judah doing this. He even, and this is where it really starts to get like, holy cow, this guy is going all in. He is betting it all. Even though it's not going to change the outcome, he's betting it all on God. Because you had, in verse 11, 23 verse 11, you had this thing called these horses that were dedicated to the sun. Okay? Many religions did this. They worshiped the sun, the moon, and the stars. The Baal pantheon was no different. And so you had this religion. This religion was mostly done in Assyria and it's Armenians, the Armenes, used this cult of the sun where they would take their best horses and they would dedicate it to the Lord, to the sun. And those best horses would be the horses that the priests would use. They would be fed the best feed. They would be given the highest priority, right? If anything died, you still tried to protect those precious horses. Now think about it. You're a king. And you go in and you see in your stables these immaculate, beautiful horses, but they're dedicated to a false god. How many of us would go, well, the God's not real? I'll just sort of take those for myself, thank you. I'm sure God won't mind. And we try to rationalize it as if, you know what, it's not the horse's fault. It's a really good horse. It would be, imagine it, if you would have these beautiful vehicles that were all dedicated to Islam. We're talking like Porsches, Lamborghinis, right? Top of the line, beautiful cars. But they're all dedicated to a false god. But they're all outside in the church parking lot. And we can use them if we want to. But they have been used to serve false gods. What do? Do you just, give them a paint job? Fix them up so that nobody recognizes them? Hey, pastor can really drive in style now. Or you torch them. What did Josiah do? He burned them to the ground. He took those horses and he had them destroyed, bringing a cost to him. He gave up something that could have been really cool. But he said, if it's used for a false worship, I don't care about it. Destroy it. I don't want anything to do with it. Nothing in his house was ever going to belong to a false god. Ever. That's how serious he was about that problem. He then didn't just contain his fury to Jerusalem. He went all over the nation, starting in Bethel, the suburb that was just 2 miles away, just 2 miles to the north. Bethel is a city where Lazarus and Mary and Martha were from. And he went up there to the hill in the top of Bethel and he tore down the false gods there. And he went to any other hill that he could find. If you could find a hill in Judah that had an idol, he would search it out and he would burn it to the ground. And while he's destroying all these high places, this is the amazing thing about it. He finds a bunch of graves to priests that served these false gods because they wanted to be buried close to their God. So he said, not in Jerusalem. He took out those bones of these priests, of these false gods, and he burned them on the altar to those false gods, and he scattered their ashes. But then he sees this monument that was made just near Bethel. And he's like, what's that? What is this monument? And they go, oh, well, those were men of God. Some of the people who were with him knew. These were prophets. These were servants of the Lord who saw what was happening in Israel. And they went up to Israel in order to try to convince Israel to repent, to convince Israel to come back to the Lord, to convince those kings to stop worshiping false prophets, to stop doing what Jeroboam had even done, where you put the holy cow in one city and you put the holy cow in another city and you just go worship the holy cow. Imagine whatever God you want to come in on that cow. Right? They tried to go to these kings, these people, and tell them, it's wrong, stop doing it. But they were killed. And so we buried him here. And Josiah then said, well, those bones, let them rest. What does that tell us? Josiah is not committing wanton destruction. My daughter is reading right now a book called Tale of Two Cities. Talks a lot about the reformations that were happening in France and in England during the post-Revolutionary War period, the Napoleonic Age. And in that book, it talks a lot about the mob rule, mob justice, mob violence. You can't satisfy the mob. And when France tried to reform itself, tried to get rid of the king, they wanted something that was impossible to achieve on this earth. See, when the United States reformed, we had three things that we really believed in, three things that to this day is on our coins, it's on our money. It's called the American Trinity. E pluribus unum, of many one. In God we trust, and liberty. You're free to make your own decisions. We're going to trust in God, and it doesn't matter who you are. You come to the United States, you believe in the things that we believe in here, you're an American. Not a Chinese American, not a white American, not an African American, you're American. End of story. That was what our country was supposed to be. That was who we were meant to be. But when the French had their revolution, it was liberty, equality, and fraternity. No God. Liberty, they wanted you to make the freedom of your own to make your own choices. Fraternity, we're all brothers here. But then equality, somehow everyone is going to be equal. There's the problem. You can have liberty, but then not everything's going to be equal. You can have equality, but then not everyone's going to be free. You can't have both. And so the mob ruled. And they destroyed France, trying to produce the fruits of what they saw was a virtuous utopian society. And it was so bad that it ushered in the age of terror under a man named Robespierre, who took control of the reins, declared himself to be a dictator, and executed more men who possibly could vie for his power. That's why they welcomed Napoleon, because anything was better than Robespierre and his reign of terror. That's mob violence. That's wanton destruction. That's just, we will destroy everything. Josiah didn't do that. He wanted reform, but he didn't want to just destroy the old. He didn't just want to tear down everything. He systematically sought out what was evil, what served false gods, and he destroyed that in order to say, hey, God, for you, I'm giving my best. It didn't matter whether it was going to change anything. He knew God deserved his best, and that's what he gave. You see the difference? What about our best? Are we giving it constantly to the Lord? Are we systematically seeking parts of our life that could be pulling us away from God and saying, none of that anymore? I'm giving God my all because he deserves it. It doesn't matter what happens around the rest of the world. It doesn't even matter if it changes the circumstances of my own life. It only matters that God is God and he deserves my best because he not only created me, he redeemed me. So that's what I'm going to give him. Because Josiah did that, there was a type of change. I want you to see for a second, Josiah started out when he was 8 years old in the green. That was his kingdom. By the time Josiah died, his kingdom stretched all the way to include most of the territory of Israel. All that green outline was now places that Josiah was responsible for by the time he died. He doubled his territory. And so when he ruled over cities in Samaria, he wiped out those gods too. Destroyed all the gods that were set up by Ahab and Jezebel and Jeroboam, both first and second. Wiping them all out as much as he could. from Bethel all the way up to Dan. He was on a mission in order to purge Israel. He was serious. And then, as he read in Deuteronomy, every year they were supposed to celebrate the Passover. Every year they were supposed to honor the fact that God had delivered them. And so he looked at the Passover traditions and he said, you know what? We're not doing this. The last time Israel really celebrated the Passover was with Hezekiah. And he said, we got to celebrate the Passover. So in one of the last few years of his remaining life, he didn't know it. He was still a young man. He was only like 39. In his 38th or his 39th year, he decided to celebrate the Passover. The Bible in 2 Kings describes it like this. No one had made a Passover like Josiah from the days of the judges all the way through the days of the kings. Even Hezekiah's Passover was not like this because he didn't have Deuteronomy. Josiah did. And he obeyed the law in every way he could, in every letter he could, no matter what benefit would happen upon him. He obeyed, he obeyed, he obeyed. And I want you to hear this. When 2 Kings wraps up the description of Josiah, look at what they say about this man. No one, all of Judah and all of history, the history of Israel, no one had turned to God like Josiah in all his heart, in all his soul, and in all his muchness. Doesn't that sound familiar? What does that sound like? Turn to God in all your heart, in all your soul, and in all your strength, your muchness. Where's that from? Didn't someone say that? Who? I heard it. Who? It was Jesus. And what did Jesus say about it? That's the greatest commandment. The greatest commandment is located in Deuteronomy chapter 6. It's part of the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh Ehad. Hear, O Israel, that God is Yahweh, God is one. You will love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your muchness. With everything that is in you, you love God. And here 2 Kings says, that's Josiah. Every part of him loved God. The very fiber of his being exuded love of God. Oh, to have that type of description in our life, where if we would die, God would say about us, that man loved me with all of his heart, his soul, his mind, his strength. Every part of him was in love with God. Every part of her just oozed God's love. It just flowed out of them like dripping syrup. Thick and wonderful. And it touched everything they did. Wouldn't you want that description about you? I would. I can't think of a better description of anyone in the Old Testament. And it was given by Josiah. 2 Kings says there was no one like him afterwards either. What a man. What a man who unfortunately, tragically died. Because even though he exuded love, still Yahweh was angry at him. And that's the point. It didn't change anything. Josiah gave God his all. But Yahweh was still angry. He still looked at the hearts of Israel. He still saw their wicked ways. He still knew that they were going to turn to evil, not to him. And so he planned. Josiah started king at 8 years old, but he only reigned 31 years. which means at the ripe old age of 39, Josiah was younger than me. The Lord took him home. How? There was this Egyptian pharaoh by the name of Necho. And Egypt, what happened? Oh, it's there, but not there. Egypt had aligned itself with Assyria. And there were two big bad nations that were rising up in the east, Babylon and Mede. The Medes eventually were going to align themselves with the Persians, but Babylon was going to be the next major empire. Babylon and Medes decided that they had already conquered Nineveh, the capital of Assyria, and now they were going after two more major cities, Haran and Carchemish. And so the Assyrians called to the Egyptian pharaoh and said, we need your help, gather your forces, join us in battle against the Babylonians and the Medes, and maybe we can stay off their rise to power. So the Egyptian pharaoh, Necho, decided to go up to join the battle. But the battle was going to be in the north, and Josiah knew they were going to lose. That had already been prophesied in Habakkuk that Babylon was going to be the next major superpower. And Josiah didn't want the destruction of those major warring nations, Babylon and Mede, and the Assyrians and the Egyptians, to fight where it would eventually be fighting in Israel. As Babylon would have to push Egypt all the way back to its lands. And so he went out to meet the Pharaoh to say, hey, stop it. Don't come out any further. Just let prophecy fulfill itself. Assyria is done for. But the moment that Josiah got to Pharaoh, Necho shot him dead. And he died at a place called the Megiddo Pass in his own chariot. And they had to take his dead body back to Jerusalem in order to proceed to bury him there. So God's prophecy was fulfilled. Babylon was rising in power, and it was soon going to consume even Judah and take people back into captivity. But Josiah wouldn't see it. He was already buried in his grave. So why? Why did Josiah give himself to God when it wouldn't change the future? Why would he do such a thing? Why? Because obedience is worth it, no matter the outcome. That's what he knew. We often think we have to know the outcome to obey. And if we understand this good outcome, well, then I'll consider obeying. That's not Josiah, and that's what God is asking for. Josiah said, it doesn't matter the outcome. I obey because God is worth my obedience. Church, you want transformation? You want this church to be a place that can be described like Josiah, oozing with the love of God for all of his heart, soul, mind, and strength. Then why do we give ourselves to God if it's not going to change our future, if it's not going to change our marriage, if it's not going to change necessarily the church, if it's not going to change the problems that are happening in Ukraine or damage anything else in the world? Why would I want to give myself to a God like that? Because obedience is worth it no matter the outcome here. Your obedience, your submission, your love of God is worth it because Josiah recognized it doesn't matter if he dies. Your life isn't about the here and the now. It's about the glory of what will be. And if you live for the now, you will lose the now and the future. But if you live for the future, you live for the glory of that obedience to God, no matter what it does now, you'll often find that the now is thrown in. C.S. Lewis says, you seek heaven, you get earth thrown in. You seek earth, you lose them both. It's obedience. Serving God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, that has intrinsic value to our God. That's why we obey, no matter what the outcome is. Let's pray. What is standing in the way of your obedience? Is it an idol of some sort? Our hearts are built to worship, and if we're not worshiping God, then we're going to worship something else. Is it a fear? A fear that you're going to somehow lose out, you're going to miss the future that you want? Is it a frustration that if you truly follow God, there's going to be something you have to give up? Something that you know is standing in your way, something that you kind of like, that you don't want to lose. Whatever it is, I promise you, it's not worth it. Only your obedience to God is. It only has value. So I want you to take some time today and pray, just you and God, and ask God, please help my heart to change so that I can see that you're truly worth it. Full commitment, full obedience, full submission to God, no matter the outcome, is worth it. Pray for that right now. Lord, we just pray. We pray that today, at the end of our service, we can have a heart like Josiah, a heart that is turned 100% to you, that gives up all that we have and seeks that deeper walk, that deeper relationship with you. Lord, we say we want transformation. It means we've got to love you with our heart. We can't choose other things. You have to be the first choice of our life. We love you with all of our soul, with everything about us, which means we need to get rid of parts of what we do, of who we are, that are crowding you out, that are making you less important to us. It's taking our time and our energy away from you. And Lord, we need to love you with all of our muchness, with all of our effort, to give you our 100% adoration, glory, thanksgiving, honor, praise. You deserve that kind of commitment. So Lord, I pray that the description of Josiah can be the description of GCCI, that we love you with all of our heart, with all of our soul, and with everything that is in us. In Jesus' name I pray.